All right, everybody. This is some actually good news. Most of today's topics have not exactly been on the positive side of things, but this is one we can genuinely just laugh and smile about without a hint of shame. Sandy Hook families plan to liquidate bankrupted Alex Jones's estate, moves to a March hearing. That's right, guys. The Sandy Hook families have Alex Jones by the balls now. Not only has Alex Jones filed for, I believe he's filed for, what's it called, Chapter 2 bankruptcy or whatever, when you, file for bankruptcy for your own personal LLC. And then I believe he's also now filed for personal bankruptcy. Now he's being forced to liquidate his assets in a plan that is being decided by the families of Sandy Hook for how best to bankrupt him. Oh my god, we are in such a good time to be alive. We're in such a good time to be alive right now. Just this one story. Good things do happen. There is a God. Praise Allah. Attorneys representing the Sandy Hook families who sued Alex Jones for defamation in Texas and Connecticut have advanced a plan to liquidate the estate of bankrupted InfoWars host by a unanimous vote. For people who don't know what's going on here, basically Alex Jones claimed that after a big school shooting happened at Sandy Hook, that it didn't happen. In fact, he claimed the Democrats paid crisis actors to act it all out in order to harm gun legislation and ban guns. Obviously, this was all demonstrably false and an evil thing to claim about the families and dead children, or the families of dead children and said dead children. They're crisis actors and it wasn't real and they're evil and they're trying to take your rights away. What followed was a massive amount of harassment and death threats to the families of the dead children and to the survivors from Alex Jones fans, and they proceeded to sue him. And Sandy Hook happened in 2012. It's been over a decade this has been going on. Alex Jones has been fighting this legal case for as long as the political space online has had him at the forefront. This is him, after a decade of fighting this in court, finally facing the music. This has all been happening in the background for a decade. The vote, a formality in the bankruptcy process, was recorded last week in Southern Texas Bankruptcy Court, where Jones has been in protection from his $1.5 billion debt to the Sandy Hook families for the last 14 months. $1.5 billion is how much he owes the families across all of them. The vote in favor of the family's plan for Jones to sell everything required by law sets up a confirmation hearing before Judge Christopher Lopez in late March, where both sides will argue the merits of their plan to resolve Jones's debt to the families. Jones's attorneys have counter-offered a plan that would pay Sandy Hook families $55 million over 10 years. The vote in favor of the family's plan, recorded in court last Friday, also serves as a rejection of Alex Jones's counter-offer, said Mark Bankston, an attorney who represented the parents of a slain Sandy Hook boy Jones defamed during a trial in Texas in 2022, where the jury awarded them $49 million. Everything is done by the attorneys, Bankston said, of the complicated bankruptcy process. It's the lawyers who handle everything. God, better call Saul. Better fucking call Saul. Do we have any videos going over this? Law and Crime Network. What is this?
I personally don't have $2 million. The company's almost completely out of money. We're in bankruptcy. There's 2 appeals. It'll take years. There's caps on almost all of this. This is just completely, absolutely made up.
After a jury hits Alex Jones with an almost $1 billion damages award, will the plaintiffs ever see any...
$1 billion fucking dollars, dude. That's... I think it got up to 1.5 billion, didn't it? Didn't it get up to 1.5 billion? Or is it just 1 billion?
Any of that money? Bankruptcy professor Bruce Markell explains. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. No surprise that we have heavily covered the Alex Jones case here on Sidebar, and of course the monumental
I wonder what their take's going to be
that has everyone talking right now. A Connecticut jury awarded a former FBI agent and family members of victims in the 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting $965 million in damages. This is for Jones's public comments on InfoWars programs that Sandy Hook was a false flag event, that it was staged, that there were crisis actors. And it was also shown how his engagement with his followers kept increasing as he kept spouting this off, and how he profited off of this by selling products on his website. And the most disturbing aspect of all is that Jones' supporters
This guy seems
actually
based.
threatened and harassed some of the plaintiffs in this case. And this was
Exactly what I said happened.
a trial where Jones had lost by default judgment. The judge ruled that he automatically lost because
He didn't show up.
chose not to comply with court orders, discovery obligations in this case. So he was automatically found liable for various claims like defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. So it just became a question of how much did he have to pay out to the plaintiffs? And on top of the $965 million in damages, he's also going to have to pay out attorney's fees and costs, and the issue of punitive damages, which are punishment damages, seemingly will be decided later on by the court. And this also comes after another trial in Texas where a jury awarded the plaintiffs there almost $50 million to be paid out by Alex Jones. And he has another trial coming up. So the main question that we keep getting right after this happened is, how is he going to pay this? Can Alex Jones actually pay this out? Will the plaintiffs ever see any of this money? Well, all right, so let me bring in my expert right now, Professor Bruce Allen.
They're going to we already know how. Liquidating all of his assets. His personal and, well, he's already filed for, like, his, like, LLC bankruptcy. I forget what chapter bankruptcy that is, but, like, yeah, he's already, I think he might have already filed for personal bankruptcy, too. So it's like, they're just liquidating his possessions now, which means, like, he has to sell all of it so he can have actual, like, you know, currency, like actual money, and then that's what he has to pay. So he's losing his Rolexes, cars, mansions. I think it's chapter 2, but I might be wrong. I'm not super familiar with bankruptcy.
He's an Edward Avery Harriman Law School professor of bankruptcy law and practice at Northwestern
This guy's an
University.
expert.
Professor, good to see you again. And I think the last time we spoke, it was either on Jones or it was on Amber Heard, but you are an expert in the bankruptcy field.
It was an Amber Heard, and yeah, these celebrity problems keep arising in bankruptcy.
They do. So let me ask you the $965 million question. Is he going to be able to pay this out? Are the plaintiffs going to see any money?
Two questions. He's never going to pay the $965. I mean, that's a practical issue. I don't think he can generate that much income over the rest.
He doesn't have that much to give.
Will the plaintiffs see anything? Is the more interesting question, and that's going to be a question that has a lot of moving parts. For example, we know that Jones has various and different entities through which his revenue from his podcasts and his show goes through. Not all are in bankruptcy. He stated publicly he will not file bankruptcy. But I'll give you an analogy.
Apparently that's what he's going to have to liquidate, though.
O.J. Simpson may have been found innocent in a criminal court, but the parents of Ron Goldman, who was murdered at the time, actually got a $30 million civil judgment against O.J. Simpson in 1997. And with interest, OJ now owes them over or close to $97, $98 million. OJ's maybe paid, depending on who you read, how you read, he's maybe paid $500,000 of that over the time. And it's not been a voluntary payments. They seized his Heisman and they sold it at auction. They can, once you have a judgment, which is what the plaintiffs here have or will have soon, then all sorts of summary collection procedures are appropriate. Now, bankruptcy can stop that and can regularize it somewhat. But if Jones is unwilling to file bankruptcy, then he's just going to be like OJ, which is basically he will go to whatever jurisdiction has the best protection against judgment creditors seeking to take his property.
You mean he's going to move there personally?
Well, I mean, he actually lives.
He has a whole bunker. He'd have to move his bunker
in Texas, and Texas has
of course it's Texas
strong protections for debtors. For example, the Texas Constitution says that you can have a homestead in an unlimited amount. So if he found some money and bought say a $965 million house which in Texas, I don't know, maybe that is a house. He could shield all of his equity in a house from the plaintiffs.
Genuinely fuck red states so much. God, they're like red states. I always learn new things about how Republicans have made the states that are their strongholds like havens for like the types of people like this to get away with murder. But then, of course, there's always the projection of, like, right now, famously, it's like big story right now. I might cover it in a separate stream. There is like a district attorney or something in like maybe Arizona who has like a murderer who needs to be extradited back to New York City or back to New York where he's from, and is now refusing to because she claims that the left-wing district attorneys, or I think it's the governor is refusing of Arizona or something, is refusing to send him over because, quote unquote, the left-wing, easy-on-crime New York judges and district attorneys will just release this dangerous murderer. We think it's safer to keep him here. So they're refusing to comply with requests to extradite a prisoner. You understand what this precedent sets, right? This means, like, you could be trans and visit a state that is criminalized being trans, and even if you're from a criminalized to be trans state, that state now, there's a precedent to just say, no, we're not giving you back. No, we're keeping you here. You're staying out your sentence in our state, and we refuse to give you back to the state that you are from. Even if the thing you did isn't a crime in that state, so you wouldn't be in jail. Like, and it'll be Republicans that do this. Like, the governor will make it a thing.
Once it's in the real estate in Texas and it's his homestead where he lives. There's a case that people talk about in Texas where someone who owed a lot of money built a 40-story skyscraper, which normally would not be exempt, but he put a penthouse on it and he lived in it. And so he exempted the entire skyscraper.
Very fair and well-balanced country. Man, Republican policy, like, you can't blame Democrats for this. This is a Texas thing. No world in which you can blame Democrats for this. This is the policies that Republicans actually implement when they gain power. They run on wedge issues like guns and woke CRT, and then half the shit they apply as far as policy is shit like this that's meant to cover their own asses.
Texas law is very favorable to debtors with respect. That and Florida are two.
They should, make him own the penthouse and sell the rest of it, but demolish but he has to stay in the penthouse and they have to demolish the rest of it. The penthouse is at the top, reminder, so they have to demolish the rest of it, but he gets to keep the penthouse and he has to stay in it. That would be good.
Quite favorable jurisdictions. And the history is in the United States is that if debtors wish to squirrel away their assets and hide it, it's very difficult for creditors like the tort claimants in Sandy Hook to ever get finally paid. And someone who has proved to be as pugnacious and obstreperous as Jones has.
Damn, it looks like nothing good ever happens. I'm pretty, like, by the sounds of it, I believe this guy. I think Alex Jones is going to find a way, like many of these people do, to get away with this. Like, Alex Jones is going to find a way to keep his Rolexes, his cars, his mansions. There fundamentally is no real consequences once you're rich enough. Once you've got enough millions, like, there's always loopholes and ways that you can keep millions still, no matter how much bullshit you pull. I really do think Alex Jones is going to get away almost scot-free with this, by the sounds of things.
There's every reason to believe that he will take advantage of every avenue he could to shield his assets.
But it has to be legal, right? So here's the thing. I understand he could go to the appeals court. He could try to appeal these judgments. He could try to appeal the default judgments. It's his right to do that. The problem is, if he goes to the point where he's secretly hiding assets, can't the plaintiff's attorney immediately immediately conduct an investigation and have the court get involved in terms of
Is there
fraudulent
hope?
asset transfers? When can they start, garnishing his wages or things that he's earning? How far can he push it out? Could something happen in the immediate future?
As I understand it, the plaintiffs in the Texas case have already initiated the fraudulent transfer investigation. And you're absolutely right. I mean, people have, until it's collected, the right to transfer their property to anybody they want. Lawyers use the fancy term alienate their property, but you can sell your property anytime you want. But if you do it with the intent to hinder, delay, or defraud, and that's the statutory language, creditors, then it can be set aside. But you have to know where it's going. You have to know when it happens. And that's why I said initially, I'm not sure. I've kind of read a fair amount on this. I don't know how many entities Jones has had prior to this where he's, changed revenue streams or changed assets. I mean, for example, some assets like...
How much money do you think Alex Jones has in Russia? That's the big question. What percentage of his money do you think is in Russia? That's what I want to know. At least $500,000? I guarantee you, Russia is where he's keeping a good bit of his money.
Just take it one. Social Security.
It won't be in America. Not since all this shit has started.
So even if someone owes $1 billion, their Social Security doesn't get touched. Certain pension rights, depending. I mean, O.J. Simpson's living on his NFL pension because the pension's completely exempt from creditor attachment. Now, what assets he has now,
specifically for the old white people, your pension, no matter how big it is, completely exempt from being garnished. This is specifically laws put in place by Republicans to help old white people like them.
I mean, there are businesses
old rich white
that
people
are in the business of finding where the assets have been hid. If they're international businesses, they often hire ex-Mossad agents to go find the assets. But it's a question of you got to find it to know to set it aside. And someone like Jones, who has, basically saying in a show, I can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and keep them at bay for years and they'll never see a penny. I'm sure he is thinking about transferring his assets someplace else. And there are places where you can transfer the assets that no one can touch. For example, obscure, but it's used a lot. I mean, the New York Times said, to the extent of a couple $1 trillion, the Cook Islands, a former protectorate of New Zealand, exists in the Pacific Ocean. They don't recognize U.S. judgments. They don't recognize U.S. fraudulent transfers. If you can transfer your money there, the only person who can get it out would be Jones. And even if Jones is under order from a court to turn over that money, the Cook Islands law says if you're compelled to transfer the money, we don't have to honor the request. So lots of people, and people are doing this all over. There's a really funny story out of Canada where someone tried to do this, where they actually tried to ship a FedEx box full of cash to the Cook Islands.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, right.
By the way, I know Alex Jones watched our live stream of the verdict going down. He might be listening to this sidebar and may actually listen to what you're saying and do this. I do want to ask you something real quick though, and this is completely your expertise. I'm just reading about it, but bankruptcy mediation, do you think it would be in the benefit of the plaintiffs right now to work out some sort of resolution? And I guess that's another way of saying a settlement with Jones, that they could work out a payment schedule. And maybe that's the most immediate way.
The settlement that's been reached is that he's liquidating his assets, by the way. Like this came before the liquidation of Jones's assets. We basically got two big bombshell updates from this story back to back. One was the decision of how much Jones would have to pay cumulatively to all the families, which is that $197 million judgment. It's been or not $197 million, the $971 million, the nearly $1 billion. And the second big bombshell that came out 2 days ago, after this video came out, is that the decision is that they're going to liquidate his assets. They're going to split it all up to all of the people that were affected, including that FBI agent, as well as the families and the survivors and stuff that he defamed. And hopefully they get their the amount that they can get. But like they're saying, there's a lot of ways that Alex Jones could be hiding stuff. But there's also, like, to a certain extent, there's so much stuff that can be seized. He has a lot of stuff like Rolexes, cars, a bunker, a lot of stuff that he can't really say he lives in. He can't really, like, I can't imagine as exempt. I don't know what kind of pension thing he's got going on. He's quite old, so I imagine he could be on one, and he owns his own company, so he could have that, like, his pension could be paid into by himself. He's paying it to himself, so it's like, yeah, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing.
That they could see some sort of money. Is that realistic? How does that work?
It's possible, but I would say not realistic because of the parties involved. I do mediation. I did mediations as a judge. I do mediations.
Damn, this guy was a judge.
Mediations only work if both sides want to settle. And a good mediator finds a way to breach gulfs and understandings between the parties to get them to understand that a settlement is always better than litigation. That's taken without any question whatsoever. My worst mediations have been when someone doesn't really want to settle. They've been told, you go to mediation, and so they'll just sit there.
Oh, this is Alex Jones huffing copium and pretending to, like, cheer as he's found as he's demanded to pay the $900 million.
To breach gulfs and understandings.
Watch his, like, fake copium celebration.
To that a settlement is always better than litigation. That's.
You ready for this? This is him reacting to, like, he's fucked. This is him getting, like, hearing he didn't show up. He's been found he's been lost by default, right? So this is him doing, like, a copium fake celebration upon hearing the bad news to try and cover up how clearly upset he is to see how much he owes. Even if he can get out of it, this is not a good situation for him.
That's taken without any question whatsoever. My worst mediations have been when someone doesn't really want to settle. They've been told, you go
Look
to
at his eyes.
mediation, and so they'll just sit there.
Look at his eyes.
I've had, for example, student loan agencies kind of come to mediations, cross their arms, and go, we're not settling. We're just here because we were told to be here. And if Jones takes that attitude, it's not going to be helpful. Also, on the plaintiff side, maybe they're not looking for money. Maybe they're looking for justice. Maybe they're looking for some type of showing that, yeah, Jones. We're not looking to make money off of this. We're looking,
what would he even be pretending to celebrate? So Alex Jones does this weird thing where he throws, like, a victim temper tantrum. So, like, Alex Jones will, like, talk about the way he's treated by the quote-unquote media and the courts and say, well, they think I'm evil, and so, I'm the worst person ever, so cheer when Alex Jones gets something bad happens to him, And so that he kind of does this, like, persecution thing where he tries to, like, play a victim. And so what he's probably doing there is, like, trying to be like, this is what the media is doing right now. Yeah, Western civilization has fallen. We've gotten Alex Jones. That's probably what he's, like, cheering or whatever. So it's like he's kind of, like, mimicking the evil lefties celebrating his downfall as a way of, like, goading his audience into supporting him more. He kind of does that. It's like a way of garnering pity from his audience, so they think he's some kind of, like, political prisoner or, some kind of what's the word for it? Oppressed political figure who's being put down.
They will get some money and they're due that money, but maybe they're looking for something more than that. Mediation doesn't give you that.
And you put them in the hot seat, and you can't keep them in the hot seat for this. I will ask you real quick. We have about a minute left. The question that I always see with this, and which complicates it, if he was found liable for defamation and intentional wrongdoing, can't he not seek protection from the bankruptcy court? I thought that if you commit an intentional wrongdoing, the bankruptcy court is not going to be your savior.
Well, nuanced answer. He can file bankruptcy. He gets the benefit of staying all litigation, but the debt will not be discharged. So it's like if someone punches me in the nose, they can file bankruptcy and get rid of all their credit card debt, for example, but they can't get rid of the debt for which they caused me injury. And so, $965 million is probably a large amount of what.
Basically, Alex Jones will have an unsurmountable amount of debt hanging over his head for the rest of his life. Unless, like, Donald Trump or some bajillionaire like Musk decides to make a political, like, point and a massive monetary sacrifice that benefits them in no way and only just like helps the right-wing political cause, as if they're that selfless for their ideals, only then, if like a super rich person just paid for it for political gain, would Alex Jones not have this debt hanging above him for the rest of his life. Elon gave up $44 billion to buy Twitter. Yeah, that's definitely true, but what you have to remember is that Elon has lost a lot more money since then. He paid $44 billion to buy Twitter, so starting $44 billion in the hole, and has quickly continued to lose more. And you have to remember that, like, Tesla's not doing great right now as far as stocks go. I think that Starlink's doing okay. Like, Starlink, I think, is doing all right. They're expanding. They're getting more satellites up there. But there's also been a couple satellites that have gone out of orbit, unfortunately. And I think it's bad, because, like, Starlink is a cool thing if it can be, like, widespread and overwhelmingly available. And there's also a big problem with collisions, especially over the poles of our planet. A lot of, like, commercial satellites get sent up there, and they collide. And it ends up being a big problem. So a couple of SpaceX, or not SpaceX, a couple SpaceX and a couple Starlink satellites have collided. Good? It's not good. It's not good. No. Space junk around the planet's not good. We do not want shit in orbit. The more stuff we have in orbit, the worse. We want to have the minimum amount of stuff in orbit and the stuff that is in orbit actually being used. We've got a lot of discontinued satellites just floating around up there, and we have to account for them when we send new stuff up there because they can collide. The ISS has to correct its trajectory all the fucking time to avoid stuff. People have had to take cover during spacewalks outside the ISS while making repairs to hide. Fuck Elon, but that's bad. Yeah, like Elon Musk is honestly not even a big contributor to this. This has been going on for decades upon decades with many nations and private companies putting satellites into orbit and other things into orbit as well. And, you know, there's a lot of shit in orbit. It's you know, it's a big area. You know, it's not like you're constantly dodging shit or anything like that. But, like, when something does come, it's going at the speed of, like, 26,000 kilometers a second or whatever. And it's just going to blast through whatever it hits. So you really got to avoid it.
Jones.
Nothing we've sent up would possibly hit Earth if it came down, by the way. Like, we haven't sent anything up into space that if it came back down would cause serious damage.
Those generally.
It would burn up.
And so it wouldn't help to discharge that. But he might file it just to stay the litigation so that he could work out a mediation. But everything I have read would indicate that's probably not what he wants to do.
Complicated, but so is this whole situation. Professor Markel, thank you so much for taking the time and explaining it. I think our audience will really...
That was a really good video. So this was the Law and Crime Sidebar with Jesse Weber and Anjanette Levy. Hopefully my editor remembers to put a link to that in the description. Dude, I'm going to lose it. Literally in my last video that got up, like the first video of the day, in that video I said, hopefully my editor remembers to include the link. You know, Ethan's still a little new to editing, so he's not 100% like got it down to like a science yet, like all the steps and everything. So he's still getting used to it. And I specify I've got an editor. If there's like a mistake in the thumbnail, the title, or anything like that, it's my editor. But don't give him a hard time because he's still getting used to things. And all the comments were still directed at me for there not being the link there in the video. It's like, in the video, I said that my editor was the one. I genuinely want to ban those people, but I hope to God they mean well, and I don't ban them. But I really want to, because they are so fucking annoying. Like, this weird, like, constant harping on, like, nothing issues. They're just being dumb, but I get you. Yeah, it's like, those are the comments that actually frustrate me. Like, actual hate comments don't get me. It's when my own fans comment stupid shit. Especially when it's like, no, Zan. A take that I have like 5 minutes later in the video from what I can tell they stopped watching and left their comment. That's the most frustrating. Like, how many times have you seen someone comment down below on one of my videos? It's so obvious they paused and commented. And, like, I literally say exactly what they claim is, like, a debunk of my video moments after where they clearly paused it and commented. How many times have you guys seen that in chat, like, in the comments yourselves? Bruh, just watch the video and see if the person adds more context, SMH, or leave the comment and keep watching. If I do that, I always get embarrassed and delete my comment. Yeah, like, you can always delete the comment, too. After, like, you continue to watch or edit it. You can edit a comment. Say, like, correction. Shit, I didn't know he said that. Like, I don't know. Happens all the time. That's frustrating to realize you did. Yeah. Well, just think before you comment. That's really the moral of the story. And hopefully you guys have the link there whenever this goes up, because we're still getting the engines a going, okay? We're still getting the engines a going.